These are some of the most horrifying interrogations you'll ever see, where the detectives encounter some extremely disturbing individuals. Starting with the interrogation of Michael Beaver, a 15-year-old killer charged with murdering his entire family.
Hello?
My brother's attacking my family.
Your dad is attacking your family?
No, my brother.
These were the chilling words of 12-year-old Daniel James Beaver as he begged for the police to save him from his two older brothers, who were running rampant throughout his house, killing everybody inside. But less than a minute after the phone call began, Daniel could be heard screaming and begging for his life until the line went dead. Police arrived at the scene quickly and were greeted by a gruesome scene that had played out all across the house. Blood was found smattered around the porch, and a faint cry for help could be heard from inside. The plea came from 13-year-old Crystal Beaver, but everybody else in the house, except for 2-year-old Autumn, was dead.
One of the surviving Bever children, a 13-year-old girl, saying her brothers were fascinated by mass killings for at least a year.
Police heard commotion near the back door of the property and discovered perpetrators Robert and Michael Beaver covered in blood and smiling as if they were proud of what they had done. Robert was laughing and told police that killing more than one person had turned him into a god. Unfortunately, Robert's interrogation tape was never released to the public, but 15-year-old Michael's is fully available and gives us some insight into what drove these boys to commit such a brutal crime.
I was hoping maybe you could kind of just go back at the beginning when all this started and kind of tell me what happened.
A couple months ago, we started talking about rampage and stuff like that.
Okay.
And I didn't take it seriously at first, but then he started buying like body armor and stuff.
Where did he buy body armor from?
eBay and Amazon.
Robert's room was found filled with weapons and body armor, including machetes, hunting knives, and daggers. Apparently, they'd been collecting all of this for months, but when their sister Crystal told their mother about it, she simply passed it off as normal, saying that boys will be boys, and there's nothing to worry about. She couldn't have been more wrong.
The guns, where did he start buying guns from?
He bought them online. I think the website's like Bud's Gun Shop, and he bought two Glock 41, and a shotgun. I forget, it's like a Moss boot, I think. Then he bought 250 shotgun rounds on eBay. And then I think he bought close to 1,000 rounds for the Glocks.
Wow, okay.
Where was he supposed to pick those?
The ammunition was being shipped to the house.
Knives and machetes were one thing, but guns and over 1,000 rounds of ammunition are a completely different matter. So once they'd ordered it to their house, they knew that their parents couldn't be home when it arrived. But what did they even need all of these weapons for? It doesn't take 1,000 bullets to kill 5 people. Well, it turns out that the brothers had a much, much bigger plan.
Tell me more about making plans and what you guys talked about.
Making plans, we all plotted every night.
Why did he want to do it?
Because he just, says he hates everyone. He thinks society is pointless. And so he wanted to, beat, amount of other famous people like Columbine and James Egan Holmes.
So did you guys have a goal? Did you have a number?
He just wanted, I think he wanted to kill 50.
Okay.
The two boys stayed up late most nights talking and scheming, and once they realized they were both separately interested in murder, the die was cast, and from their perspective, there was no turning back. The boys had grown a bond throughout their lives due to their living conditions. Their parents, April and David Beaver, were somewhat abusive to their children. They were homeschooled and even told not to interact with children outside of their own family. This left them alone with their own thoughts a lot of the time, and their only perspective of the outside world was the one that they'd formed in their own minds. This is how they developed such a negative outlook on society, and what drove them to form the next part of their plan.
You picked a date, you said.
Yeah, which was yesterday night. That was the date.
How'd you pick the date?
It involved the number of packages and stuff would be out. Because, all the ammunition, he didn't want them to see that. So we wanted to kill everyone at the house first.
Okay.
And then wait for all the packages to show up over the weekend. And then we take the Yukon and we drive our state with the guns.
So, their plan was set. Michael even said their idea was to cut up and dismember the bodies of their family and hide them in bins while they camped out waiting for the guns to arrive. He even added the gruesome detail that they only left Autumn alive because they had planned to decapitate her with an axe a little while later. But of course, all of these ambitious plans fell at the first hurdle. So what was it that happened that night that caused everything to fall apart for the brothers? The murders began with Crystal, who had entered their room at 11:30 p.m. on the 22nd of July, 2015, to the sight of them gearing up with body armor and knives. Michael lured her over to his computer, and Robert slit her throat from behind.
And so she fell down and started screaming.
Yeah, one of them kept stabbing me. I kind of freaked out because, and then my mom came in and she started yelling, call the police, get Dad. And then he came over and started attacking her.
So he stabbed your mom with the same knife?
Yep, same knife.
And where did he stab her?
I think in the neck too.
At this point, Crystal had managed to get up and stumble out of the door in an effort to escape, but Michael quickly followed her and dragged her back inside.
Is she still alive?
Yeah, she was still screaming. And then that's about the time Dad came down. They got a little bit of a fight, but then eventually Robert got him down,
Did he cut his throat too?
The three eldest members of the family were now well and truly out of action. With their parents dead and Crystal's throat slit, bleeding out on the porch, they just left their four younger siblings, the people they thought would give them the least problems. This is also where we rejoin the story from earlier, and Daniel is on the phone with police hidden in his room.
I was sitting on the phone with the police. I grabbed the phone, which is my phone, got my phone, and then I ran into the kitchen and I smashed the underground.
Which was your phone?
Yeah, it was my phone.
Now you don't have a cell phone anymore.
Shortly after, Daniel too was stabbed 21 times in the back, shoulder, and chest. The final two victims were hidden in locked rooms, but Michael managed to convince them that Robert was attacking him too. This lured them out, and the brothers finished their attack by once more stabbing 6-year-old Christopher and 5-year-old Victoria to death. Throughout this interview, though, Michael has been placing a huge amount of blame on Robert, even at points saying that he was just standing there, letting Robert do all the work, and that he was only part of this in the first place because he knew Robert was going to do this anyway, and he wanted to be on his good side.
I didn't want to kill anyone, I couldn't do it, so I was going to let him, kill everyone.
Yeah, but you stabbed somebody in the neck. I mean,
I just kind of...
How do you feel about what you've done now?
I didn't like it.
I mean, how do you feel about your mother? You watched her get stabbed, you cut her throat yourself, and you watched her bleed all over the place and scream. How does that make you feel?
Think about it.
Unfortunately, though, in his interview, Robert had absolutely no concerns telling the whole truth and nothing but the truth, eventually cluing the cops in that Michael may have had a larger part than he originally let on.
The guys that are interviewing Robert kind of gave me a quick version of what he's saying that you did.
Yeah.
And you haven't told me everything, okay? So I know you're not being completely honest. I'm just one of hundreds of people that are gonna look at this thing. We got the state police coming in, and every single stab wound that you inflicted, we're gonna know about. Everybody's been stabbed, and you both had knives, and we know you both stabbed everybody. So you guys are kind of at the same level. Who's gonna be honest and make this right? And who's a liar? Okay, which one do you wanna be?
I'm not.
As is often the case, this simple rhetoric was all the cops needed to use to get Michael to open up and finally confess to being as big a part of the murders as Robert was. Michael admitted to slitting the throats of Crystal and his mother, as well as stabbing Christopher to death. And as usual, one confession led to another, and we gained even deeper insight into the minds of these twisted teens.
You only stabbed your family because they were in the way towards the bigger plan?
They were in the way and, higher count.
This higher count, I'm confused. Is this a game?
It's kind of become famous, kind of good.
It now fully comes to light that the murders truly weren't personal to any extent, and that the entire reason for this slaughter, and any that would follow, was just for recognition and fame. This became even more obvious when searches of the home revealed rolling surveillance cameras and storage drives with all of their plans saved to them. Robert later revealed that they planned to make 2 videos, one to taunt the police with, and another to post online. The rest of Michael's interview footage consists of him writing a statement that unfortunately was never publicized. But whatever it was that he wrote must have been pretty messed up, as the detective watching over him couldn't even finish reading it, and reacted like this. Of course, at trial, neither of the boys stood much of a chance, yet Michael attempted to plead not guilty on the grounds of insanity. However, it didn't go so well for either of them, and they were both given 5 life sentences without the possibility of parole. But this next case with a murderous grandma was much more complex.
Is he alive? He's not? Oh, good. Oh, thank you.
This is 63-year-old Cynthia Siedebacher, a once beloved grandmother and wife who chillingly was hiding a dark secret. When Cynthia suffered a stroke, her daughter Laura agreed to let her stay in their guest house while she recovered, allowing her to live in comfort near her family. But comfort is far from what Cynthia experienced, as inside the lavish, expensive house in California lived a troubled and unhappy family.
My brother would tell me that she didn't approve of the way he disciplined the kids. On the other hand, my brother didn't approve the way she would discipline his kids.
While outwardly being known as an agreeable and friendly guy, Laura's husband Jawad was secretly a harsh and aggressive father. In what he simply called tough love, he would verbally and physically abuse his family, as well as break his children's toys when they misbehaved.
My Aunt Cindy would be on the back patio smoking because she wasn't allowed to smoke in the house. And he would be out there watering, and he would see, oh, where I see smoke, I see fire. Gotta put out the fire, and he would hose my aunt down with the hose. He did it to my cousin too, to Laura, his wife.
At one point in a bout of rage, he even threw out Cynthia's late husband's ashes. But despite all this, the family put up with Jawad's actions, until one day, everything took a horrifying turn for the worst. Cynthia had purchased a revolver from a local munitions store. All she needed now was the trigger, and it wouldn't take long for one to appear. On her 62nd birthday, before heading out to her granddaughter's spelling bee, Jawad said something that filled her with rage.
You can't go like that because it looks like you're ghetto in this.
Just a few minutes later, 5 gunshots would be heard echoing across the neighborhood. Then 5 more, and 5 more again. Jawad's body was found later sprawled across the kitchen floor, covered from head to toe in 12 bullet holes. Meanwhile, Cynthia had traveled to a nearby Denny's to order breakfast, and then went to casually celebrate her birthday at a casino, completely unfazed by the horrific acts that she'd just committed. But due to her jaded past with Jawad, it wouldn't take long for police to land on Cynthia as a leading suspect, and they picked her up at a coffee shop just hours after the murder. But who would suspect a sweet old grandma had just killed her own daughter's husband? Cynthia knew that in custody, all she'd have to do was spin a couple lies, put on an act, and by all accounts, she'd be set free.
Well, unfortunately, Laura's husband has passed away.
Huh?
We're going to ask you some questions. We're going to ask you some questions because we're trying to figure out what happened today, okay?
All right.
Likely realizing that she wasn't going to be winning any awards, it wouldn't be long before she dropped the act, and her tears turned to disdain.
What did you think of him? Okay, and why do you say that?
That's the big thumbs down. You didn't like him.
Eventually, Cynthia remembered how to speak and told detectives about the abuse that her family had endured because of Jawad, recounting the times that he would spray his family with water, verbally attack his kids, and even choke his wife. So while detectives were now aware that Cynthia wasn't the biggest fan of Jawad, they didn't expect what would happen next.
Did anybody try to stop him?
Can't stop him.
It sounds like somebody had to stop him. Or...
I did. I was guilty.
Okay. Somebody had to stop him.
I did.
Okay, it's okay.
Is he dead?
You tell me.
Gotta be dead.
I think he's dead.
I hope so.
Cynthia's near instant admission of guilt was followed almost immediately by a chilling recount of the gruesome events.
You got your gun from your purse, and then what happened?
Went and shot him. Wasn't enough.
After she fired all 5 shots out of that revolver, she chose to go all the way to her car and reload 5 more rounds into her gun. She walked back into the backyard and found the victim bleeding and crawling, trying to get away. And at that time, she pumped 5 more shots into his body. She still wasn't done. She still chose to go to her car and load 5 more rounds. She pulled out that revolver and fired 5 more shots
until the victim was finally dead.
It was also later revealed that just a few weeks before the event, Cynthia had traveled to a local gun range to take shooting lessons with the same gun she purchased to kill Jawad. Another obvious sign that the murder was planned and premeditated. But premeditated murders are usually done in a state of pure rage where the killer is adamant that their victim must be dead by the end. Very rarely are they done with this level of nonchalance.
Did you check to see if he was dead?
I didn't care.
And it seemed as though she truly didn't care, as of course, after the murder, she went out to enjoy her birthday with breakfast, gambling, and coffee. Cynthia also showed no remorse whatsoever when she asked if she even felt bad for what she did.
You don't feel bad about it?
No.
Would you do it again?
Yes. Is he dead?
He's dead, man.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh boy, oh boy.
After less than 10 minutes of interrogation from Cynthia's denial through to her complete admission and celebration of Jawad's murder, detectives decided it was time to conclude the investigation. Cynthia's family was let in to say their final goodbyes, and it was here that they truly realized they were living in a nightmare that nobody could ever hope to experience.
I wanted to.
Through Laura's shrill and uncontrollable agony, Cynthia sits there, nothing but pleased with what she's done, a cold-blooded, unremorseful killer granny. And while her granddaughter was asked to come say goodbye for the final time, Cynthia was shown the true scale of the havoc she'd wreaked on this family, as she refused to even enter the room.
Oh, honey. Oh. Don't kiss me.
No, you killed my dad.
This notion of Cynthia being this cold-blooded killer granny was enforced further by the reply she gave when the detective advised her to pray to a higher power that she would be treated well through the justice system.
Whoever you pray to, you make sure that
I don't pray to anybody.
call it a higher power.
I prayed today.
Okay.
First time I ever prayed.
What'd you pray for?
Hope he died.
Oh boy.
3 years after the shooting of Jawad Eustaquio, the trial of Cynthia Sidibaka began. While it was admittedly obvious that Cynthia had indeed killed Jawad, the main questions the trial aimed to explore were, was the murder premeditated, and was it justifiable? The case against premeditation was fairly easy to debunk. Remember, Cynthia had bought the gun used in the murder just a few weeks before, and she'd even visited a shooting range to hone her skills to make sure the kill was carried out swiftly. It also didn't help that in this interrogation, Cynthia had said this.
13 years I wanted to go get him. I'm devastated.
But the idea of the homicide being justifiable was slightly harder to argue with. Cynthia had claims that Jawad was an abuser, both verbally and physically. In fact, the defense even had Jawad's wife Laura on their side. She attempted to argue that he indeed was abusive, and that it could be excused that in an act of passion or rage, Cynthia had discharged the weapon to protect her family from this man that was supposedly destroying it from the inside out. But of course, the extraordinary interrogation tape was once again cited to dismantle the case. And a few weeks later, a decision was made.
And fix the degree thereof as murder in the first degree.
This is a tragedy. I love my mom. I love Jawad. There's no win here. Not for anyone. It's just complete sadness.
Cynthia Sidibaka was sentenced to 50 years in prison. At 65 years old, that meant she'd be living the rest of her life behind bars. Some people argue that Cynthia's actions were somewhat justified, but the same absolutely can't be said for the disgusting acts of Courtney Clenny, the OnlyFans influencer who was taken to the police station on suspicion of killing her fiancé.
And now all of a sudden this is all happening.
What's his name?
Christian Tobecha Kurobam.
Christian?
Please, I'm scared of him.
On the 3rd of April 2022, Miami police received a terrifying phone call.
I can't feel my arm. I can't feel my arm. Oh, my boyfriend is dying of a stab. Ma'am, what is the address? 131 Northeast 7 times. Baby, I'm so sorry.
27-year-old Christian Toby Abumseli was bleeding out in his girlfriend's lap with a brutal stab wound to the chest. When police arrived, pools of blood were found all over the apartment, and Toby was barely clinging to life. OnlyFans model Courtney Clenny had met Toby back in 2020. The two seemed to be deeply in love, but behind closed doors, things were completely different. The couple were known to have violent fights, and the police were even called multiple times to their apartment. But their biggest argument would take place in April of 2022 and result in Toby bleeding out and begging for his life. Courtney told police she had nothing to do with it, but police thought differently. So she was brought in for questioning, and a 5-hour-long interrogation began.
My apologies for being absolutely covered in blood.
Listen, you don't have to apologize, okay? I completely understand. Alright? Things happen, and you can't control it. Okay? How long have you guys been together?
About 2 years. A year and a half to 2 years, yeah.
Okay.
Is he okay?
He's still at the hospital. They're still,
I know.
monitoring him and talking to him. So we're waiting.
Oh my God! So he didn't even have to have surgery.
Well, I don't know. They're still doing X-rays and stuff like that. So I don't know yet. I'm waiting to hear a response.
That's all I have to know. Thank God.
The detectives tell Courtney that Toby is in the hospital, but alive. Detectives are usually unaware of how a suspect will react to certain information, so it's often safest to open by easing any worries they may have and talking in a non-accusatory manner. This makes the suspect feel more relaxed and more likely to open up.
I just got back together. I had broken up with him, and then he came back the last 2 nights, and then started into an argument, and I ended up getting scared, and I think that I overreacted, or not overreacted necessarily, but reacted, and I just didn't know exactly what might happen.
Do you guys work here in Miami, or do you guys have your own business?
I do social media, so I'm an influencer, I guess is what calls, yes, I'm an influencer.
What do you focus on, like Instagram or social media?
Instagram, LinkedIn.
And what is it that he does?
Stocks and crypto.
Stocks and crypto.
He just has stocks and lots of crypto. We were gonna move into a house. So have an apartment, and then we were like, maybe just move here for a year. And then once we got here, we were like, no, this is dope.
Yeah.
So we have the dog picked out. It's a golden retriever. We're gonna name Mello. So we're gonna get the house so we can have a backyard. Because I have 2 dogs, and then we're gonna have 3. So we're planning on staying here for a while. Sorry.
Once again, you don't have to apologize.
The detectives can tell Courtney is in a vulnerable state, but at the end of the day, they're there to solve a crime. Courtney's being investigated for stabbing Toby, and the only defense she's given so far is that there was an argument and things got out of hand. If Courtney did in fact do what she's being accused of, being forced to think about her past and future with Toby would really be messing with her emotions, causing her to become more vulnerable and hopefully lead to an easy confession.
Let's start from the start. You guys were supposed to take out your dogs to the park, right? And then what happened after that?
Like I said, a little bit blur. I was doing laundry and tried to call my mom. She didn't answer the first time. And then he left. I guess he went to go bike over there. That's just what he said. I don't know if he walked or biked, but he told me he was going to bike first.
Like a bicycle?
Yeah. Okay. And then he came back with a Subway sandwich, and I said something about oh, are you gonna reshare your location with me, did you and share it? And he said, yeah, and shared it. And I was like, oh, when did you do that? And he goes, the other day, when you were done with me. And I was like, okay, well, fair enough, reshare it. And then he told, it kind of turned into a little argument or something. And then he told me to reshare mine, and I was like, okay, yeah, I will. And then I didn't do it immediately. He asked me about it again, and I don't know what I was thinking, but it just said something about, well, what if I'm somewhere you don't want me to be? Which I wouldn't have been. I love him, but maybe you don't want to know where I am. I guess maybe it'll just hurt him because he was pressing me. And he ended up pinning me against the wall. I mean, I said, like, choking me on the floor. It's just, like, they were looking at my neck, and I was like, I mean, I'm not saying, like, choking me, like, you know, whatever. But, I mean, he had my, like, neck. Like, and this happened twice before, where I couldn't breathe, and I was on the floor. Yeah. I could not breathe. And I don't think that he was trying to kill me, but I was scared. And all 3 times I have been scared. I'm on the floor. And you have me pinned. Get my mom on the phone. So this happened like over by the door and somehow moved like over in the living room. He was standing by the couch, facing toward the kitchen, and I was in the kitchen. And then he just like, I could see like all the whites in his eyes, and he was like coming at me. And so I grabbed one of these knives. My mom got me for Christmas. I grabbed one of them, and I was like, I swear to God, it was just like, I mean, I grab and be like, don't come anywhere closer to me. Because, I mean, earlier, I was having 2 other times I couldn't breathe. I'm sorry. I couldn't breathe. And it's very scary. And I just think, like, just like this kind of thing where I was saying, like, do you know if he's okay? If he's choking me and he's angry enough, he might, like, I mean, this is different, I think. But if he's, like, choking me or, like, pinning me or something and I can't breathe, he might go too long. So I grabbed my knife and I said, don't come anywhere closer to me. I had absolutely no intention of using it. I'm on the phone with my mom, and he's coming at me like he's going to grab either the phone or, like, the knife or something. And so I was just like, I was like, don't come any closer. It's coming at me, and I threw it. And I meant for it to go.
How far away was he?
Well, I was by my fridge, and he was, like, by the edge of one of the chairs of the sofa. Like
comparing to what
10 feet. I'm trying to think in my head.
To recap, Courtney says that an argument started when the pair had both stopped sharing their phone locations that resulted in him pinning her against the floor and her retaliating by throwing a kitchen knife across the room, piercing him in the chest. Courtney also clearly states that her attack was in self-defense and specifically involved her throwing a knife 10 feet across the apartment that landed perfectly in his chest, causing him to bleed out and fear for his life.
So then, you were by the fridge and he was by the couch?
Yes, I was in front of the fridge. He was by the couch.
Yes, and then
behind my island.
And then what kind of movements did he make at the moment? He was going to walk
running
up?
At me.
Running? Okay.
Well, charging, aggressively walking, something.
What was he doing? Like, was he doing something with his hands or?
He had his hands up. I couldn't tell you exactly.
Was he yelling at you at the time?
Yes.
Was that at the moment that he was charging you or earlier in one of the arguments?
It was before he choked me. Yes, it was before he choked me.
Okay.
Or whatever. But I swear to God, I was scared. I mean, after like what I was scared. And I was on the phone with my mom and it was still happening.
Yeah.
I was scared.
So you told me that he had you against the wall at one point, right? With his hands over your neck?
Mm-hmm.
And how did you end up from the wall to the ground?
Let me go, and then I started swinging on him because I had been against the wall.
Okay.
I started trying to hit him.
Yeah.
And then he put me on the ground.
He dropped you to the ground.
When I'm trying to remember like a whole situation of where I was very upset about something, which I've learned this in therapy and whatever, it's like write down like all the details so you don't forget. Just like write it all out clearly so that it makes sense to you and makes sense to somebody else. But I haven't had a chance to have a pen and paper or my phone to like write down exactly what happened, and I haven't really even like fully thought about it. So honestly, my answer is I don't remember.
That's fine. Okay. You guys have a history of violence?
Yeah.
You say you've been together how long, sir?
Almost 2 years.
Almost 2 years.
1.5 to 2 years.
So how many incidents you think you've had?
I don't know, but we shouldn't be together.
Have you made a report before?
No.
You've never made a report?
Oh, I did in Dallas actually about a year ago, and he was detained.
And what happened there?
He had pushed me in lobby, but it wasn't like a big deal, and they made it a huge deal.
The couple had also been involved in another incident in Las Vegas less than a year earlier. Police were called to their apartment after a loud argument was heard, as well as glasses smashing on the floor and walls. The apartment was trashed when police arrived, and Courtney's story was all over the place.
Why did you call for help?
Because we were getting really loud. We were getting loud. And I was like, oh my God, we're gonna like do damage to the room or something. Not damage to each other. Like I really want to like.
Why would you think
that?
Why would you think that you were gonna do damage to the room?
I like throwing something or like.
Did you throw something?
Did I?
Yeah.
No.
Did anybody throw anything?
No.
So why would you think that there is damage to the room to be made?
Because I've done that before in our house, and I.
What have you done?
Thrown a glass and a plate.
Did you throw a glass or a plate to a team today?
No.
Okay. So
no, this is before.
Okay. So when I go to the room and I see a broken glass on the floor, where did the glass come from?
I don't know. I literally couldn't even remember how the fight started.
Okay. Well.
Was there?
Yeah.
Maybe I did. Well, I'm guessing that I threw a glass, but that sounds like me. So.
Courtney was brought to jail and held for 12 hours overnight, but Toby refused to press charges and advocated heavily for release. This may seem like nothing, but police did conclude that Courtney had attacked him that night by throwing a glass at his head. If nothing else, it proves that Courtney was capable of attacking Toby unprovoked and opens up an entirely new avenue for this investigation. However, it also turns out that police had been in contact with the couple more recently. In fact, they'd actually been called by security to their apartment the day before the attack.
But the cops have been up there one other time yesterday for absolutely no reason. Absolutely none. They harassed, not the police, but security guards from the office, like young security guards.
Okay.
Came up for no reason. Bothered him, bothered me.
The cops were called, however, and captured an entire exchange on body cams, providing a stark contrast to the story that Courtney gave here.
You didn't call.
I didn't. Nobody.
I called. You called.
What?
Okay.
What's going on?
Okay. Hold on, man. Let him talk. Okay. Yeah, hold on. Okay. Go ahead. The front desk personnel, she informed us that Miss Courtney, her boyfriend, was trying to get into the elevator. And she had her hand out like this, and she was like, oh no, don't come inside the elevator. Okay. So we asked her, I said, do you want him to leave the property? She said no, she don't want him to.
I did not say that. I said yes.
Hold on.
Courtney, what's going on? What do you need? What?
Yeah,
my boyfriend.
All right. So what do you want us to do?
I want a restraining order against Christian Ubumzeli.
We don't issue those.
Because, no, I'm serious.
To courts.
Can I do that? Where
you have
can
to
I
go to court. You have to go to
okay,
downtown.
But how can I make myself first?
Courtney is obviously extremely panicked in this footage and seems less concerned about any possible that she may have been sustaining and more worried about getting a restraining order before Toby can. It's also important to note that the building's security noticed her pushing Toby out of the elevator and screaming at him and mentioned absolutely no aggression coming from him. As the evidence mounts up, it's starting to get increasingly more likely that Courtney's whole self-defense story might be straying slightly away from the truth. But as is almost always the case in situations like these, everything is still hearsay, and officially debunking her claims is going to be a challenge for the detectives. But after leaving her alone for almost an hour and letting her change clothes, they return to the interrogation room with some more news for her.
So you're living in a nightmare right now.
Yes.
You know?
I will feel so much better once they just say he's stable.
Yeah.
And I've been asking so much.
That's what we're waiting for.
I mean, I feel like at the end, I mean, if he's not, that's a lot worse for me.
So they've asked for an update, and I asked them for an update as well, so they're checking to see what's going on. Because they're
I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what I will do with myself if he's not okay.
No matter what.
I mean, I clearly we can't be together.
No matter what happens, no matter where this falls, right? It's out of our control.
So we have to inform you that Christian did not make it. Okay. Unfortunately, the doctors did what they could. And
Christian is dead.
Yes.
Oh my God. This is not real, right? Okay. There's no way. Christian died? Can I please have a hug? Am I allowed to do that in here?
Sure. Yeah. Relax. You'll be fine.
No.
Calm down. Calm down. Take deep breaths.
I need to hug my mom. I cannot be left alone in like a room by myself.
You won't be.
After this. No, that's not true. That's not real, right?
It is real.
Christian is dead.
Yes. They're not gonna lie.
The last thing he ate was Subway. What I was saying to that other room, I said, God forbid, when like from far away, what if it had accidentally hit a little bit lower and he died?
So we can't change what's occurred and get him before. So just step by step. So you'll get through this, all right?
It's easy to tell by the detectives' reactions that they're fairly convinced what happened was indeed self-defense. In fact, one of them was even talking earlier about how he's sure she'd be allowed home that night and that everything was going to be fine. So it obviously wasn't hard for her lawyer to convince them officially that she wasn't guilty and she was let off without any charges. But remember, the detectives weren't aware of any of the evidence mentioned so far. All they know is what Courtney told them. So as time went on, evidence started to mount up, and the Abumseli's case was starting to become stronger and stronger. The body cam videos started to become publicly available, and the true nature of her previous arrests came to light. There were also unflattering videos such as this one showing her drunk in public just days after her release.
Yeah, and they're seeking justice.
Sir?
Yeah,
What?
let's all videotape her. Right now, you should go. Yeah, you should go. Because you just know her boyfriend. Yeah, you did. Yeah, and yeah. Yeah, okay, cool.
Sure, people make mistakes and drink too much. But when you're seen acting like this in public just days after bawling your eyes out in an interrogation room, you don't exactly get painted in the best light. Just days later, footage secretly recorded by Toby was found on his phone displaying Courtney violently screaming at him, using aggressive language, hitting him across the face, and using racial slurs.
You literally talked to her without telling me!
Courtney, I was on a bike ride and she passed me and I said, hi, you and Courtney are having a live chat. My bad, I forgot to tell you that. That doesn't make you to act and call me a Yes, thank you. Coming from Courtney, thank you.
I want you to get away from me!
So due to this and many other accounts stating that Courtney was well and truly the one, she was officially taken to court by Toby's family. This is where the final nail in the coffin was delivered by a medical examiner who'd observed Toby's body and come to a conclusion.
Now, based on the information you received that the defendant was alleged to have thrown this knife, do your observations support that?
If the person who supposedly did this is an expert knife thrower, and the knife is the type of knife that you can throw, I guess that could have happened.
Did you receive any information that the defendant was a knife thrower?
No.
So based on that fact that you did not receive that information, would it support that?
No.
And what would you expect to see a knife do if someone just flung it at somebody?
It would just hit the body and bounce off.
Now, as a result of this case, did you come to a cause, or did you make a determination as to the cause and manner of death?
Yes.
Could you please explain those to the court?
The cause of death was stab wound of right subclavian artery. The manner of death was homicide.
As of April 2023, Courtney is currently awaiting what's become one of the most anticipated trials in modern history. She faces life in prison on account of second-degree murder with all of the evidence stacked against her. Courtney's case is still ongoing and is an incredibly difficult one to solve, unlike the case of Yardley Love that was solved almost instantly when the killer made a disastrous slip-up.
No way I didn't do it! No way!
At 2:15 a.m. on the 3rd of May 2010, police arrived at 22-year-old Yardley Love's college apartment to a distressing scene. One of Love's roommates, Caitlin, who had gone back to talk with her, was met with horror when realizing what was in Yardley's room. There was a large hole punched in her bedroom door, and in the center of the room, Yardley Love's lifeless body, face down, lying in blood. Caitlin immediately notified the police. The police arrived at the gruesome scene just a few minutes later. Upon arrival, they anticipated the death to be some sort of alcohol or drug recovery case due to the details given in the original phone call, but immediately after seeing the body, they realized there was something far more sinister at play. It was quickly discovered that there were clearly visible physical injuries across Love's body, including a black eye, bruising along the right side of her face, and large bleeding gashes along her legs. Attempts were hastily made to revive the girl, but after half an hour of the original discovery, Yardley Love was pronounced dead, presumed murdered. To understand the full context of this case, we must first look into Yardley Love's life and school background. Yardley was a very smart college student who easily excelled in all her classes. But not only was she an amazing student, she was also a great athlete. In fact, Yardley loved to play sports, having a special love for lacrosse and being exceptionally talented at it. The thing Yardley adored more than all of that, though, was her loving boyfriend, 22-year-old George Hughley. The two were outwardly known as completely normal, and even quite a charming couple. But unbeknownst to most, George had an exceedingly violent past, causing many brushes with the law. In 2007, he was found in possession of alcohol while underage, and just a year later, he was arrested for reckless driving, being drunk in public, and resisting arrest outside a fraternity house in Virginia. He was tased, given a suspended sentence with 6 months of probation. None of this was disclosed to his university, making his subsequent violent behavior within the school even more of a secret. George's main issues, though, were with both alcohol abuse and anger. Just 1 year into his relationship with Yardley, he attacked one of his teammates after hearing a rumor that they had kissed her. And in another concerning display of anger soon after, he had to be pulled off of Yardley after pinning her down out of pure rage. All of this caused their relationship to become heavily unstable, described by some as rocky and unpredictable. Yardley was known to be very uncomfortable with her boyfriend's use of alcohol and was often scared by his rage-fueled outbursts. So after almost 2.5 years of dating, Yardley finally decided to break up with him in April of 2010. This is why directly after her murder, many of Yardley's friends pointed directly to George when asked who they thought could have been the suspect. Her friends had also caught wind of emails and messages between the couple, in which Yardley had apologized for the breakup, only to be met with the violent and angry responses. On the 4th of May, just over 24 hours after the murder, Hughley was charged with the murder of Yardley Love and was brought in for questioning. The entire interrogation was recorded with police cameras and showcases from start to finish a tragic tale of a man blissfully unaware of the nightmare he is responsible for. The interview begins with the detective informing George that he is being detained, and as such is not free to leave the interrogation, but at no point does she explain what crime it is that's being investigated. At this point, George is not aware that Yardley Love is dead. Questioning begins with George explaining his whereabouts on May 2nd, the night of Yardley's murder.
I went to dinner with my dad and my two buddies.
Where was that? Where did you?
I went to C&L.
Okay.
And then, went home, went to the bar for like a little while. And
what time did you go out to eat?
That was probably 7:30 with dinner.
Okay.
And then went home, I drank a few beers, went, like, I went to the bar for a little while, I went to Boyle Heights.
Wow, okay.
Then I went over to talk to Yardley.
Who's Yardley?
Yardley is my former girlfriend.
George explains that after a night of drinking, he'd gone to see Yardley in her own apartment. The detective uses this as an opportunity to strengthen the notion that this interview has nothing to do with Yardley by simply asking who she was. This will become important later in the interrogation.
When I went over to talk to Yardley, I was like, Yardley, and she was like, already like totally freaked out because of what she did this past, like, a few days ago, and we hadn't talked since, and I was just gonna go talk to her. And she was already like, oh, like, freaking out.
George mentions that Yardley was freaked out when he arrived at her apartment, apparently due to the innocent reasoning that they hadn't talked since the breakup, and she simply wasn't expecting to see him. We know this notion to be untrue, and her shock was likely down to a drunken George appearing in her apartment, and quite literally kicking down her bedroom door. Nevertheless, the detective stays empathetic and unbiased in her comments, again, enforcing the idea that she's just there to collect information and has nothing against George himself.
What happened next?
What happened next, and she kept hitting her head against the wall while she was sitting on the bed, and I was like, I grabbed her and I like shook her. I was like, stop, like we need to like, and looked at her. I was like, we need to like talk about this. And like, I mean, I was holding her arms and stuff, but like I never struck her. I never like hit her like in the face or anything. I was just like, we need to talk. And she was so like floppy, a fish out of the water, like so like all this, all because of what happened last week. And I was like, listen, like I'm not here to like fight with you or like do anything, like here to talk to you. And she was like, no, like get away from me, all this like, and like that's what happened. Like I left, like she was in her bed. I think her nose was bleeding a little bit.
George goes into more detail about the time he spent with Yardley that evening, but describes how she had apparently been hurting herself, and the only time he put his hands on her was in an attempt to restrain her and keep her safe. But this doesn't necessarily explain the bloody nose he described her as having. The man's answers are also somewhat scattered. He adds unnecessary detail and repeats himself, the first sign that he is beginning to feel panicked and uncomfortable. The detective goes on to ask what it was that had happened last week, to which he explains that after they had broken up, Yardley had allegedly stormed into his apartment and assaulted him. He doubles down on the idea that this is why he went to see her that night, and at no point did he hit or strike the girl at all.
And I never like hit her, never struck her, never, and nothing happened.
All right, so you go over there, knock on the door.
Her front door was open, her room door was closed. I knocked, like Yardley, like she heard me, opened the door, and went in.
All right, went in where?
To her room.
All right, straight to her bedroom?
Straight to her bedroom, yeah, I mean.
How'd you get through the door?
Her door or the front door?
Her door.
Actually, it might have been locked.
It was.
Just these two words from the detective are enough to plant seeds of doubt in George's mind. Questions like, how does she know it was locked, arise, and he begins to mentally question why he's even being detained in the first place. This sets him more on edge, and he begins to fumble over his words, seemingly flustered and taken aback.
Yeah. Actually, yeah.
Just be honest with me.
Yeah, no, yeah, it was locked, yeah. Because I think I put a hole.
Yeah, you punched a hole through the door?
Pretty sure, actually, now. Yeah, that used to have that, yeah. I was like, listen, like, what you pulled last week was outrageous. Like, I just want to talk to you.
Why'd you push the door then?
Because I want to talk to her.
George is now clearly concerned and on edge, and is caught in his first lie after admitting that he had punched a hole in the door, signaling that he may have been more violent and angry than he'd originally let on, and possibly showing how he may begin to open up and explain more throughout the interrogation.
You know what you're talking about?
I mean, about so many different things.
Okay. Like what?
Like what she did last week. Like went to like Carolina, how she attacked me. You know, like she went to Carolina and hooked up with someone Sunday when we were still trying to figure out things. Came over, attacked me on Tuesday. You know, and I'm just sitting like, I was like, this is outrageous.
More information is now given as George opens up. It goes beyond him saying that he was attacked to saying that he felt as though she had cheated on him, all while he was trying to make things better between them. He expresses frustration, an emotion that can easily turn into resentment and anger under the right conditions, such as alcohol abuse.
And then we like wrestled on the ground the same way. Her nose started bleeding. And then she ended. I think she was back in bed, and I left. I was like, this is not going anywhere.
How did she get back in bed?
We were like wrestling, and we stood up, and I tossed her. I pushed her onto the bed. I was like, go to bed. Like, I'll talk to you later. I'm like, I didn't like throw her, but like we were like standing up at this point after we were wrestling on the ground. she had like a bloody nose. And I was like,
Did
go to bed.
Okay. And you kind of tossed her on the bed and you left?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you go back and check on her at any point?
No, I did not.
Okay. Did you touch her neck area at all? Did you choke her at one point?
I may have grabbed her a little bit by the neck when we were like, but I never like strangled her.
Okay.
But I mean, during the whole like commotion, you know, like I might have grabbed her neck, but I never was like strangling her.
Okay. All right.
The bloodied nose is a perfect example to describe how George continues to open up regularly throughout the interrogation. Originally, he had no idea how it had come about. His best explanation is that it happened while Yardley was hitting her own head against the wall, but now all of a sudden it happened while the two of them were wrestling on the floor. This came alongside admissions that he had pushed her onto the bed and that he may have even strangled her at one point. While he's still not made aware that he's killed the girl, pressure is continuing to rise as the truth begins to surface.
She has a pretty good knot on her head. That's why I'm asking how you can explain how that would have happened.
I mean, I don't even know when a knot. I mean,
like on the side of her head, she's been hit pretty good right there. So I'm just trying to figure out: did you hit her with something?
No.
Was that her head into the wall?
Never touched her or struck her or anything.
Well, you touched her. You had your hands on her.
I said never struck her.
Okay.
Never at all. Like.
Well, I'm trying to figure out why she's got a black eye and why she's got a big lump right there.
I mean,
So you never hit her with anything?
I don't know.
Is that what you're saying? You never hit her
I don't know how.
With anything.
So she's got a...
So, okay. All right, no, that's fine, that's fine.
The detective now decides to mount pressure even more from this point forward. Instead of letting George take the conversation where he wants, she begins to ask questions, passively accusing him of injuring her in different ways. It becomes clear that the detective is trying to raise emotions and force George into a corner, making him flustered in an attempt to get information that he wouldn't have given under normal circumstances. The next 10 minutes or so of the interrogation consist mostly of fairly placid questions about that night, where he went when he left, how much he'd had to drink, what time he went to bed, and other similar queries. However, after leaving him alone in a room for a while, the detectives return once again to turn up the pressure for the 22-year-old.
Is there another reason why you two broke up? Any arguments? Any past physical violence? Okay, because keep in mind, before we've talked to you, we've talked to other people too.
No, I understand.
Okay.
I mean, that night that she found the text messages in my phone, that night I was more drunk than I've probably ever been.
Right.
And she did the same thing, like yelling at me, like hitting me while I'm drunk. And I actually laid on her and like held her, like detained her kind of. And she ended up like leaving, but that happened that night.
How did you detain her?
I mean, sir, like that night I was...
Did you let go of her yourself, or did other people have to come and get you off of her?
I'm not, I really don't remember that night at all.
Not at all?
No, not at all.
So maybe because you maybe smothered her a little bit that night, maybe you choked her a little bit?
No, I don't think I choked her. She never said I choked her. She said I laid on her and held her.
Right.
And
how did you lay down on her?
She said I literally like laid on her.
Was she face down and you laid on top of her, or?
I don't even know. We we've hung out since that night, like a bunch of times, like actually probably a dozen times since that night.
Right.
And we haven't really talked about that since that night. Like she's never said that like I was choking her or anything. She said I literally like laid on her and like kind of like didn't let her.
She's about what, 105, 110 pounds soaking wet. You're almost double her size?
Yeah, probably.
You don't think that would maybe be enough to take the breath out of her if you're laying down on top of her?
I mean, I never thought about it like that, but I never like hurt her.
Right. Well, we never mentioned anything to her, to her face, and you constantly bringing up that you didn't punch her in the face.
No, I know.
We never even asked you that question.
I know. I mean,
did you maybe at least smack her,
no.
Hey, snap out of it or something like that?
No.
What's wrong with you?
I did not. No,
nothing like that?
I never. No. I mean, I'm in here for assault charges.
Right.
That's why.
No, I never told you you were.
Yeah,
we had any warrants on you.
A mistake like this can often be seen as an informal admission. George was at no point charged or detained for assault. He was there for murder. George becomes panicked after knowing he made a mistake here, so the questions are piled on from here on out.
Have you ever threatened any harm to her?
No.
Why'd you take her computer?
I don't know. I have no idea.
There's maybe because there's evidence on the computer, emails that you sent?
No, there's no. I mean, you can read all the emails and everything back and forth.
There's no threats. There's not going to be anything on that computer that we're going to bring up forensically that came from George saying, hey, you know what? I found out that you're cheating on me.
No.
Why'd you take that computer then?
Probably because she was like not talking to me. You know, like she did all this stuff and I just walked out of there with a computer.
Why would this little girl just for no reason start attacking you out of the blue?
You can ask my friends that the night the other night.
Yeah, the other night.
I have 3 eyewitnesses for that one.
Right.
She walked in and started punching me in the face. Hit me with her purse, hit me with her cell phone, and literally when I stood up and backed away and was like, you got to stop, like, get away from me, she came coming back for more.
Okay. Why in the heck would you break down her door then? Locked door means don't come in.
Talk to her, and I've sent her.
No, that's more than that, man. That's rage. The way that door was kicked in, that was pure rage. You must have been seriously mad.
No.
You've told us everything else.
I've told you everything. I've told you guys everything. I'm not hiding anything. Right. I've told you literally everything.
But why kick it in? That's just pure rage, man.
I wanted to talk to her. I wanted to talk to her.
Have you always been that way with her, as far as if she didn't want to do something, it was kind of your way or the highway type of thing?
No.
And you know, I understand that, you know, you had a lot of alcohol in you last night. Do you think that could have maybe led into why you were, you know, fed your emotions to kick in that door?
That may have made me rationalize kicking in the door to open it up, but it was all strictly to go in there and talk to her. I wanted to talk to her. I've told her that. I sent her emails. You can see all the emails. You can see everything.
Okay.
Like I've said like I think 3 emails. Like, I want to come talk to you when you'll say like F yourself, like, dude, you know. And I should not have gone over there when like I was drinking, but like that when I was like that's made me emotional, so I wanted to go talk to her. That's why I kicked in the door. That's why I was like trying to talk. That's why I wanted to talk to her.
Now, I know you mentioned you fell on her like a week ago, right, when you were laying down.
No, that was
a month ago.
A month.
You detained her, right? Did you detain her last night at all?
No.
Did you fall down on top of her? You know, wrestling.
We were wrestling on the ground for like a little bit.
Did y'all wrestle on the bed at all?
No, I never I mean, I shook her.
No, I mean like just kind of hold her down until she calmed down on the bed.
No, if anything that would.
If
anything that would have been like on the floor, but like.
Because I'm sure you didn't want to hurt her. That way, if you were restraining her on the bed, she wouldn't be able to hurt herself as much as
I never was like laying on her like in the bed. Like when we were on the floor, when her nose started bleeding, we were like wrestling around, and that's when her nose started bleeding.
Was it pretty noisy when you all were wrestling around?
No, I mean.
Was she screaming?
No, she wasn't. No.
I mean, if I'm cracking my head in the wall, I'm going to be saying, "Ow."
Yeah. No, I mean, she was not screaming.
Yeah.
She should have been. Probably. I mean, maybe. I don't know.
Why do you think she should have?
I don't know. I mean, well, she was screaming when I first like came into the room. She was like, "No, like I'm not talking to you. Like get the out of here," all that.
While fast-paced and phrased in an accusatory manner, all the questions up to this point were suggesting assault. There was no mention of anything to do with the loss of consciousness or death at all. But watch from this point, as all of a sudden that changes, bringing with it a stale implication for George.
At any point, before you said you and this was your words, you said you tossed her on the bed. At any point before that, did she lose consciousness?
No.
What happened after you tossed her on the bed? Did she move? Talk about, say something?
I mean, I literally tossed her on the bed and turned around and...
Tossed her on the ground or tossed her on the bed?
And walked out the door.
Okay. Did she still have her t-shirt on at that point?
Yeah.
Or did that get ripped off?
Yeah, I mean, she had her t-shirt on the entire time. She was never not unclothed.
Alright, so you didn't sexually assault her or anything?
No.
Were the lights on? And did you turn them on?
The lights were...
For you to be able to see...
The lights were not on. No.
How did you see the blood and stuff coming from her nose?
Because she's got a big bay window right by her room, and there's lights from the parking lot.
Okay.
That it's. I mean, it's not hard. It's easy to say.
Okay. So when you tossed her back on the bed, in your mind, she was bleeding. But you said she was bleeding out her nose, and you didn't feel like you needed to call rescue?
No.
After that, after banging her head and
No,
shaking her and blood coming out her nose on the floor?
No. I mean, it was.
Let me ask you this: did you when you left out there, were you kind of like she got what she deserved? Is that why you didn't call 911?
No. It wasn't about that for me. It was about going to talk to her.
With the more serious questions and allegations building up, George becomes far more defensive and panicked. But as far as he knows, he's still just here on suspicion of assault. That is, until this sudden chilling moment that this entire interview was building up to, when George's entire world is ripped out from beneath him.
Well, I have to tell you something.
Well, I think I know why you took the computer.
Why do you think?
Is that right?
Go ahead.
No? She's dead. You killed her, George. You killed her.
She's dead?
I think you knew that already.
No, I did not. How the f is she dead?
Because you killed her, George.
How the f is she dead?
Because you killed her.
We're not here for any reason, George. And that's why you took the computer, isn't it?
No.
Because you had threats to kill her on that from a past email. Because she hooked up with a player from UNC.
You say the moment. It was the heat of the moment. Yeah.
Last night was heat of the moment too, wasn't it? You went in there to talk with her, but it got out of control, right, George? The alcohol got a hold of you. You kicked in her door. She started to fight with you. You punched her in the head, or you cracked.
She's not dead.
You cracked her head.
Dead.
You cracked her head in the window or in the wall.
Not dead.
She is.
She's not dead.
I ain't BSing you right now. It's serious, George.
She is dead.
You were not here to dance with us. You're here because she's dead. The alcohol.
I don't believe it. I don't believe it.
It's true,
dude. I didn't.
Listen to me. You went in there. You kicked the door. She got a little feisty. You either punched her or you smacked her head into the concrete, and then you held her down on the pillow because that's what
you did. No, I didn't. Never on the pillow. I was never on the bed.
Okay, then. Did you punch her? Did you hit her?
There's no way she's dead. She's not dead.
Listen to me.
She's not dead.
Did you punch her or did
No, I never know.
Did you hold her head into the wall? Did you crack it?
No.
Did you
Is her head cracked?
Did you smack her head in the wall?
No, she's not dead. She's not dead. You guys said she has a black eye and a bump on her head.
She has those things.
But she's not dead. I did not.
All right, let's calm down.
I did not hurt her. Like she's not dead.
Let him calm down. Calm down a minute, George. Okay.
Tell me she's not dead. Tell me she's not dead.
I want you to calm down right now, okay?
Will you tell me she's not dead?
Relax.
Please, will you tell me?
You know what? I wish I could tell you that, George. 22-year-old, 22, and her life is done.
Kill me. She can't be dead. She can't be dead.
This 4 minutes of footage contains one of the most raw emotional reactions that have ever been caught on camera in a police interrogation. George is suddenly made aware of the fact that he, intentionally or not, took the life of his 22-year-old girlfriend of over 2.5 years. Because of his reaction to the news in this tape, it was eventually decided that the murder of Yardley Love was not premeditated. But still, on August 30th, 2012, George Hughley was sentenced to 23 years in prison for the second-degree murder of his ex-girlfriend, Yardley Love.